this extra flexibility that you can have by moving it to an IRA can really help you tailor your portfolio so it's more focused on what your long-term goals are.
If you want to learn insight on transferring a 401k to an IRA, you're going to love today's episode, so please stay tuned. Hi, I'm Annette Ba'u, host of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast and founder of the Millionaire Insider. My mission is to help you simplify the money game so you can create a financially secure and fulfilled life without having to have a PhD or spend countless hours on your finances. You're going to learn how to think like a millionaire, stop worrying about money and wondering if your financial house is truly in order, and instead spend your time doing what you love. With over 3 decades advising 7, 8, and even 9-figure millionaires, and now joining that elite group, I'm in a unique position to help you make the best financial choices so you can create a secure financial future and retirement you love. This is the Wealth Inside and Out podcast. If you have not done a financial checkup in the last year or even recently, now's the time. You want to make sure that you're on course to achieving your goals. You can go to themillionaireinsider.com/FC to access our financial checkup. A financial checkup's important, just like a medical checkup. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't do one, and then they find out way too late that they've got major challenges, just like you're going to learn today when it comes to making the decision of keeping your money in a 401k or transferring it to an IRA. You just got to make sure that the choices you're making work best for your situation. So if you want a free financial checkup, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/FC. All materials and forms and intellectual property are copywritten by themillionaireseries.com. The information is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to replace any advisor or specialist or to provide any investment, financial, tax, retirement, planning, or healthcare advice. And that is especially true with today's topic because it's so important that you look at your situation and what works for you before you make any changes. By accessing this content, you agree to hold millionaireseries.com and its affiliates harmless for results achieved or not achieved. For today's episode, you can go to themillionaireininsider.com/80. We're going to be diving into why you should transfer your 401k to an IRA, or if you should transfer it to an IRA, how it is impacted by estate planning, some of the downsides, how difficult it is to manage your 401k and or IRA. We'll dive into both of those. And even looking at the options of rolling a 401k into a Roth, which a lot of people want to know about, how it impacts your RMD and how it impacts you if you retire early. I've got Susan Kroeger here, who is one of our financial transition certified advisors and who is extremely knowledgeable on this topic. So I asked her to join me. So welcome, Susan.
Good to see you again.
Let's just start by first addressing, there's a lot of issues right now going on with the DOJ. It's something that I think is really important. And I think it's good that there are some rules coming into play. Do you want to just kind of give us an overview of what's going on with that, Susan?
Yeah, the Department of Labor wants to make sure that financial advisors keep their fiduciary duty to clients to make sure that any recommendations that they make are really truly in the client's best interest. They feel that maybe this hasn't always been done in the past, so they're formalizing the process for advisors to do that. It's on hold right now, so we're still kind of waiting to see what the final regulation looks like. But regardless, I think it's very important that if you are looking at this and you are working with someone, that you get all the facts that you need related to fees, structures, options, and that sort of a thing. So you make sure that you're doing what's best for you and your family.
Yeah, and let's talk for 1 minute, just so everyone knows what a fiduciary standard is. That basically means that the advisor has to do what's in your best interest versus their best interest. How it impacts you is the fact that the advisor has to disclose what they're earning, how it might negatively impact you. So make sure that they are making recommendations that are in your benefit versus their benefit. Do you have anything to add to the fiduciary responsibility of an advisor?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the fiduciary responsibility, it's important that advisors are giving you full disclosures on everything that they're doing so that you really understand that. And as a CFP also, that gives us another level of fiduciary responsibility to our clients to do what's in their best interest.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I just want to say that I'm already seeing, even though they haven't made their final decision. The reality of it is most companies are having you act like they do. Now, both Susan and I are already fiduciaries. We're CFPs, we're investment advisors. So we already have that responsibility. But I personally think this is great because it's starting to put people who are, say, insurance agents or out more selling a product that are not really fiduciaries, meaning they don't have to look at your best interest. I think this is a good thing. And so I know a lot of people are up in arms. And of course, a lot of the big lobby groups are really fighting this because, a lot of people will just sell one product. And, I just want to make one comment on this. When you're looking at a product to buy, whether it's an investment or whether it's an insurance product, and I'm just going to pick on annuities for 1 minute. The company we use has access to 80 of the top carriers. They go out and shop them, and then the top 5, they present them. Well, we almost always, because we have criterion that the company has to have a certain level of rating and all that, we use the top 1. Well, there's a lot of individuals who use 1 or 2 companies, and now you have to disclose that even long before this fiduciary duty. So you just got to pay attention to that because the problem is, we just got done doing quotes, and Susan, chime in on this, but we saw numbers where the person would earn as much as $10,000 less a year by doing one company versus by doing the top one. So do you have anything to add to that, Susan?
Yeah, no, I see that all the time. And unfortunately, a lot of agents are incented by how much money they're going to make, and that's the product that they propose. So it really is important to understand that and hopefully look at more than one option.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. All right, so let's back up for 1 minute. And before we start diving really into transferring it, let's just talk about why a person might even want to consider transferring their money from a 401k to an IRA. What are some of the reasons?
Yeah, now there can be a number of reasons for that. One of them is that typically a 401k has a very limited number of investment options for you. They're good about looking at that and rotating them through as performance changes, but still it is a very limited number of options. If you are going into an IRA, you can have access to all sorts of different mutual funds, ETFs, individual stocks, and even alternatives like real estate and commodities, which may be something that you're interested as far as diversifying your overall portfolio. Some 401ks do offer the option to invest on your own, but they usually charge a fee for you being able to do that. And it's something that's newer in the industry. This extra flexibility that you can have by moving it to an IRA can really help you tailor your portfolio so it's more focused on what your long-term goals are. One of the other things too, though, is that a lot of 401ks, they will actually make you leave the 401k plan when you leave the company. So then it's not really an option to leave it in that 401k. If you go to work somewhere else, it's possible you could roll that 401k over to the new one, or you could roll it into an IRA at that point.
Yeah. And I want to just share that one of my clients, she didn't even really know this happened, but she did follow up and say, where's my 401k? When we found out that she hadn't taken her Quadro, which was also a 401k, from not taking her Quadro when she could have taken the money, she literally lost about $100,000 conservatively. She might even have lost more than $200,000. It was crazy because she just ignored it. And then she remembered that she had a 401k with her previous employer. And this is interesting because I didn't even really realize that companies do this. I thought a lot of times they send out checks, but some companies, I think you pointed out, Susan, have in their documents that if you leave, they're going to take that money and roll it into an IRA for you. Well, that's what they did. They rolled it into an IRA. It was sitting in cash. She made literally no money, none. She probably lost. That one was smaller, but she still easily lost. I'll just compare it to my daughter. I mean, I put money in an IRA for her. I funded it with like $4,000 and it reached like $70,000. So, I mean, it was just crazy how much money she lost. I just want to say another example of when you just forget about it. One of my clients that I've been working with for probably about 36 years, she just randomly got a check in the mail. And it turns out that before she worked with me about 40 years ago, she worked for the company and she actually had a 401k. Now, unfortunately, it was invested in cash, $4,000. She did get the check for $4,000, but she lost all that interest that she would have had over 40 years. So do you have anything to add to that, Susan?
Yeah, I just think it's really interesting what can happen in that process. So My one caveat is if you leave your employer and you normally just throw out all the mail that comes from your investment company, you may want to open it because there could be a letter in there about what you're supposed to do with your 401k.
Such a good point. I can tell you how my clients get pieces of mail, they put them in the file, and then they don't do anything. And just like the client that we found the Quadro with, we found it because we needed proof of her name change. And then we're going through the paperwork. I'm like, do you know that you have like $50,000? And she goes, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that. It's amazing how many people forget about money they have. And that's why there's 7 trillion unclaimed. And the reason it's so low is because most of it reverts back to the state after 7 years.
Yes.
So it's just to be aware of. Let's switch gears for 1 minute. So look at the big picture. How does a 401k or rolling a 401k into an IRA impact your estate planning? Is there an impact on it?
From an estate planning perspective, I think that one of the primary advantages rolling from a 401k into an IRA is that then gives you the option to do like a Roth conversion if you wanted to. And that's a great estate planning tool if you want to be able to lower potential taxes in the future for your kids, anyone else inheriting that money, because they changed the rules on the IRAs a few years ago. And if you're a non-spouse beneficiary, you only have 10 years to take that money out. Yeah. So if you have a couple $1 million in an IRA that's going to go to your kids, they're going to have 10 years to take it out. And that's a significant amount of money to take out from a tax perspective over that time.
Well, and I think just to add to that, one of the things that just is so frustrating to me is that we had a couple of years where our income was lower. Like we didn't make as much money in our partnerships. I was transitioning my business some, so I didn't have as high income. And it would have been a perfect time for us to take some of both my husband and my qualified monies, our IRAs, and roll them into a Roth. And we missed that window. And now there's very few people that would say that taxes are not going to go up. I mean, we want to keep spending, but we don't want to pay more in taxes. It just doesn't work very well, right? And so I think that's something that if you can get your IRA or 401k into a Roth, it makes sense. Now, can a person go directly from a 401k to a Roth, or do they have to go from a 401k to an IRA to a Roth?
It's my understanding that the only thing that you can roll over from a 401k to a Roth is if you have after-tax contributions. That would be like a backdoor Roth situation, which I think you're going to be having an episode on coming up fairly soon.
Yes, we are. So just to clarify, so if somebody wants to get their 401k into a Roth, they would take it, transfer it into an IRA, and then move it over to a Roth.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
They would have to do that because I don't think that you can do the conversion within the 401k.
Yeah, that's my understanding too. But, okay. So this all sounds great. What are some of the downsides of transferring a 401k to an IRA?
So one of the things is that 401ks typically have better creditor protection. So if you got into a bankruptcy situation or something like that, those assets are more likely going to be protected from creditors than possibly an IRA. Some of the states have good protection for IRAs, but some of them it's not quite as good.
Yeah, and I just want to say you got to check on the laws because it does vary from state to state. So just be aware of that. And then I think the only other thing that I would also add is that, you always have to look at fees. And I think we're going to talk about this, but you got to realize that it may be more expensive to have somebody managing your money. Just like if you're managing your money, it could be cheaper than having a professional. Now, what you have to look at from a standpoint of if you're managing your money is that you're probably in retail funds. We can buy institutional funds where the internal fees are a lot lower because we have that capability. Most individuals do not. So when you're comparing just apples to apples, say you're investing it or you're hiring somebody, typically speaking, you're paying more internal costs, so it can offset some of their fee. But you got to look at what their fee is and how much that offsets. As far as a 401k, I've seen some 401ks, depending on what they're invested in, have very high internal costs. And then I've seen other ones be very reasonable, less expensive. Do you have any comment to that?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that completely. It just, once again, that's one of the reasons why the Department of Labor is having this fiduciary rule is they want to make sure that the advisors are getting all the information on the fees from the 401k. They're giving the client all the information on the fees from the IRA that they would be rolling it over to.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things too is that you roll it over, depending on what you roll it over to, How are they charging you? Are they charging you an upfront commission or are they charging you an ongoing fee? Sometimes it makes sense that somebody will charge an upfront amount of money, but if they're doing that, you've got to make sure that they're going to be there to service it. Because what I always get concerned with is somebody makes all their money up front. They don't really have an incentive to do anything after the fact. And when I did research for one of my books, I remember the number one complaint that I had, these were from female clients, but they said, once the person sold them something, they never heard from them again. And it was typically mutual funds or annuities. And it was kind of like they got it sold, they made their commission, and they were gone. You don't want that to be you. So make sure you've got a reputable advisor that regardless of how they're paid, whether it's upfront or ongoing, that they are doing the service work. Because you've got to, especially like if you're in an indexed annuity or even reallocating a fund, you got to make sure somebody's on top of reallocating those. Yeah. And you got to make decisions on that. Do you have anything to add to that, Susan?
I mean, I think that's a really good point because I've run into that so many times and they're like, I just have never heard from this person again. And it really is. It's annoying and it makes them feel like they've been used and they really have a hard time trusting anyone else again.
Yeah. And that's why the fiduciary duty is good.
Yeah, exactly.
In a lot of ways. So what happens if a person's just not very experienced? Like they just don't even really know what to do. So then they're kind of like sitting there sometimes doing nothing. How does it impact a person if they're not really qualified to manage it?
I think that there's different things that people can do. And I think looking for professional advice to help you make that choice initially is a good thing. If you really want something, just set it and leave it. You could put it in a life cycle fund or something like that. But you really don't necessarily know when you should be changing out, when you should be moving things based on what's happening in the market, what's happening politically, what's happening in the world. Mm-hmm. And I think getting professional advice is something that can help. Now, there's different ways that you can hire people to get personal advice. You can go in and get a consultation and go through things with them, or you can hire them to actually manage your assets.
And what is a life cycle fund?
So a life cycle fund is usually based on what your retirement date is, and it will normally have several different mutual funds or ETFs in it that they rotate on a regular basis. So the younger you are, the more aggressive that fund is going to be invested. The older you are and the more closer you are to retirement, the more conservatively that is going to be invested.
Yeah. And it's kind of like a 529 plan too. For any of you who've had those, when your kids are younger, it's invested more aggressively. And as they get closer to college, it is more conservative. I think a lot of those can be helpful too, just for somebody that might want more certainty or not having to worry about, are they going to be too aggressively invested when they get closer to retirement? But I think the other issue, and I don't know if you want to touch on this, Susan, but I am in love with guaranteed annuities. I just absolutely love them. And what I love about them is that you can earn money on it, but you can't lose money. Now, are there any 401ks where that's the case?
I have not heard of a 401k that has that sort of an option on it. But what's interesting, though, is this was several years ago that companies started giving people the option, if they were 60 or over, to be able to roll their money and do what they call an in-service withdrawal out of their 401k. And I've worked with several people on that. And what we've ended up doing for them, and I call the guaranteed income is kind of like your own self-directed pension. And for some people, for a portion of their retirement assets, that might make sense. I mean, you absolutely need liquidity, but sometimes it makes sense and it gives people much more peace of mind when they have more income coming in that they know is going to be guaranteed for the rest of their life.
Oh, yeah. Like anyone that knows anything about what's going on in the stock market, my friends, I think a lot of people are not aware. We are at an all-time high. Where did we close? Let's just see where we closed today, since I've got it like on my speed app, because it's crazy. 41,393. So 4 years ago, we were at 19,000, and we're at 41,000.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
It is unbelievable. And the S&P is 5626. Yeah, it is unbelievable. For a lot of us that are pre-retirees, our biggest thing is not losing money. Like we have more downside of losing money than we do of just maintaining our wealth. And so being able to have an investment where you can't lose money, for a lot of people, they just love the fact that they've got a guaranteed income and they don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's so true. And I did this for a client like several years ago, and we put part of their IRA money into one of these annuities that had the guaranteed income. And it was basically set up so that it would replace her husband's Social Security income when he passed. but he passed 2 years ago, and she just feels so much better now that we've got that monthly income coming into her that is supplementing what she already has.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny is because, this isn't in a qualified account, it's in non-qualified, but a lot of people love doing that for their kids, right?
Mhm.
We even have it where our kids will get an income stream as compared to giving them a lump sum amount of money.
Yeah.
And I know,
And that makes the parents feel a lot better.
oh gosh. I literally, it was probably about 15 years ago, and I had a client who was so concerned about some of her kids. And I had never really set up one of these plans where it was so strict. They're going to get a guaranteed annuity, and that's it. She was adamant. It's got to be guaranteed, and I want them to get an income stream. And what was interesting, she died, and two of the kids were livid because they were like, they thought they were going to get a lump sum. Well, now I've seen it. It's been like 16 years, and it has been the best decision I could have ever been exposed to because literally, these kids aren't wealthy, but they are okay. They've got food, shelter, and every month they get their check. It just enlightened me to now I have a lot of clients that are like that. And I am too. Even though I think my kids at some point will be fine managing money, knowing they have a certain income stream, in my opinion, is priceless.
Yeah. The guaranteed income is all about peace of mind.
Yeah, it really is. Not worrying about it. And it's so funny because I was reading this article about somebody saying, oh, I just love stocks and annuities are bad. I thought, well, I kept reading it because I'm like, well, what are they going to say? And then they're like, well, in down years, you just don't take any money. I'm like, how many people in down years when they're not working can just not take any money? And then I thought, the other thing that I will say, I love stocks. I've owned stocks my entire life. I still own a ton of stocks. I own more stocks than the vast majority of people. That said, I'm very clear that stocks go up and it goes down. Like one of the stocks I had, it had hit over 230, dropped to 202. Now today it closed at, a little bit above 220. It's volatile. Well,
Yeah.
not a lot of people can stomach that, right? Like, you're like, great. Oh my gosh, what's going on? And then you're like, okay, it's just going to go up and down. And I look at like the stocks I own right now. Just today, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are down today, 6, 7, 8 that are down, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 that are up. So that I have a lot of stocks, but still it's like you don't know. And some days it's all green, meaning they're all up. And some days it's almost all red. And so you just got to be aware of that. It's somewhat of a roller coaster ride. And even though I'm fairly conservative, I think you get to a certain point and you realize you can afford to take more risk. I don't watch it every day, but I do kind of pay attention. Anyway, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, but I agree with you though, because there's people like I had someone who recently called me and they talked about investing in NVIDIA. Well, NVIDIA is up so high right now that it's probably not the best time to be going into it. And they hear about these things. And this person is incredibly risk averse. So I was like, I don't think that's a really great idea.
Yeah, like after the fact, right? Well, and I think one thing too is the fact that I know of a person, one of my clients' relatives, who literally they bought NVIDIA at like the all-time high and then it drops and then they sold it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, actually when it drops, that's when you're supposed to buy it. And when it goes up, you're supposed to sell it. But yeah, you just got to be aware of that. Let's talk for 1 minute about RMD. So RMD, required minimum distribution, is what we're required to take once we hit a certain age. Now, I think it's really important, and Susan, you can elaborate on this, but that you understand that it continues to change. In fact, there was just a tax law change. So why don't you share with people just an idea of what the change is that's happened right now? Okay. That's literally changed since the last time we spoke about this.
Yeah. So, it has been 70 and a half for years and years and years, which is great for financial advisors because I could always remember exactly when someone was going to have to take it. Yeah. So then they changed it to 72. And now they have changed it depending upon when you were born. So like anyone born in the 1950s, they will have to start taking their required minimum distribution at age 73. For anyone born 1960 and later, it's going to be age 75 that they have to start taking that. And part of that is because we're living longer now and they want to give people a little bit more flexibility with their money over time because ideally, they don't want you to run out of money because then you're going to be supported by the government. And so that's not a good situation. But
And,
yes,
and just to add to that, this is so important. Two things. One is the fact that this is going to continue to change. I
yeah,
guarantee it. I mean, it's going to continue to go up because they want to defer people taking money out and really retiring. So you got to be aware that this number is going to continue to go up. And I think the other issue is some of you are probably going, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I encourage you to go to themillionaireinsider.com/SR, or you can go to support-request, and you can go in there and ask a question, and you can actually talk to Susan, and she can discuss your situation and really look at what you're doing and ideas of what you can do so that you make the best choice.
because I'm amazed at how many people I run into who are, of that age, and they're so upset that they have to take money out of their IRAs because honestly, they just wanted to be able to leave it to their kids.
Yes.
And so, at that point, you just need to decide what you want to do with it. And you can, take it out, pay your taxes, and reinvest it in a brokerage account too. So there are a lot of options if you have to take that and you don't really need the money and you want it to be working for your kids in the future.
Yeah. And if you have to take it and don't need the money, look up to the heavens and say thank you because you're one of the lucky ones, right?
Exactly.
You're not one of the ones that's losing sleep at night wondering if you're going to run out of money, because that's
Right.
such a big risk, especially for women. And it's something that everyone's got to be aware of. So if I retire early, is it easier to access my money from a 401k or an IRA, or how does that impact it?
Yeah, it's a little bit easier to access the money from a 401k because a lot of 401ks have a provision that you can start taking that money out at age 55 without getting a penalty, the 10% penalty. Typically on an IRA, you're going to get a penalty if you take it before age 59 and a half. There is an option called a 72T, which is really probably too complicated to get into today, but that is another option that would allow you to take it out of the IRA before 59 and a half. But you have to have certain payments for a certain number of years. And
yeah, it's kind of like when you annuitize it, so you're taking it out and you can't take it out and then stop. You have to keep taking it out.
Exactly. So it reduces your flexibility in the future, whereas
a lot. Yeah, no, I think that's important. And that's why you just got to be talking to somebody who knows what they're doing. Is there any advice that you give people on what they should do? I mean, this is a major decision. Is there any rule of thumb of what somebody should do before they decide to transfer their money from a 401k to an IRA, other than looking at the fees, looking at if they need help managing it, things like that?
Yeah, I think once again, it comes down to, where's your comfort level managing that money yourself? Working with an advisor, you're going to get professional advice on a lot of things other than just your investments as well. That can make a big difference for you. Leaving it all in your 401k kind of reduces what your flexibility is if you wanted to get guaranteed income. So it just, once again, it really depends on your situation. And I think your situation needs to be analyzed before anyone even makes a recommendation to you on what you should do.
Yeah, I think that is such great advice. And I think it's also important to understand that, with the exception of the company where you work, and if they're publicly traded, their stock being in the 401k, I have never seen any individual stocks with that except for that exception. Have you?
No, the only time you can do that is if the 401k has a self-directed option on it.
And most don't.
Yeah, it's mostly larger companies that have that option.
It's rare. So that's something just to be aware of. Now, I'm not recommending you go invest in single stocks, but I also think that as you get to a certain amount of money, and ideally you're working with an advisor who's really looking at your big picture, so they're not, sometimes we get so caught up where it's like with a forest among the trees, somebody that can see the big picture vision and not get emotionally attached. But you might want to be invested some in single stocks. And so if that's the case, then it probably makes more sense to be in an IRA than a 401k. Is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners? This has been such a wealth of information.
Yeah, I mean, it just, once again, stop and think about what you're doing. Make sure you're doing things for the right reason. Talk to more than one person as well, so you're getting different ideas. I know a lot of clients, they go out and they interview several financial advisors before they start working with one so that they can really understand what their philosophy is and make sure that it's in line with them. That's about the only other thing I can think to add right now.
I think that's great. Just to add to your point, it's kind of like most people, if somebody just came and asked you to marry you, we'd run as fast as we could. What? You get to know someone. And I think you're going to have a long-term relationship with your advisor, especially if they're good. And so you do want to spend the time really getting to know them and making sure that not only that you agree with their philosophy, but the fact that you can see yourself having some type of relationship with them. You're going to need to get along with them. You're going to need to like them to a certain extent. And you just want to make sure that it's going to be a good relationship. Boy, this has just been such a wealth of information. I want to thank you so much, Susan, for joining us. Let's recap for a minute. We covered just considerations as far as transferring a 401k to an IRA, and specifically some of the new rules that are going down the pipeline where people now have higher responsibility and higher standard. And I think it'd be important for you to ask your advisor. Maybe that law won't take effect, or maybe it will, but asking them, do you have a fiduciary duty? Making sure you're working with somebody who does. I think that's critical. We looked at how it impacts estate planning from a standpoint of being able to make sure your heirs get it and being able to even possibly take the 401k into an IRA and then a Roth so that your heirs are not going to have to pay as much in taxes. We talked about some of the downsides, which expenses can be higher, might not have as much creditor protection depending on the state you live. And then we also discussed as far as what you can own in your 401k and IRA, which for many people, that's important. If you want guarantees or you want more risk, both of those could be reasons. And then, we looked at the different scenario as far as how RMD is impacted. And the one thing I want you to leave with from a perspective of RMD is it's going to change 110 times between now and whenever you're listening to this. So always, always check with a qualified advisor. You can go to themillionaireinsider.com/SR if you want to ask Susan questions or you have just generic questions. And then also, if you want to retire early, looking at the options there and making sure that you're really thinking that through from a bigger standpoint, because you really ideally don't want to be taking money out of your qualified accounts until you have to, unless you have so much money that you're like, I'll never spend it. So I might as well start taking it now. I want to thank you again so much, Susan. This has been a wealth of information.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I just want to remind you that now is a perfect time to do a financial checkup. If you want to know the next best step to secure your financial future, now is the time to do a checkup. You can go to themillionaireinsider.com/FC. Most people understand the importance of a medical checkup, but not so much a financial checkup. In fact, most people don't get financial checkups, right? They do them every now and then, or they don't do them at all. So I encourage you, if you have not done a financial checkup in the last, say, 6 months, now is a great time. So again, themillionaireinsider.com/FC. The stock market is at an all-time high. There are a lot of people that would be very well served looking and saying, are you still in line with your risk tolerance? Are you still in line with what you want to achieve in retirement? And doing what you need to do so you can enjoy your life now and secure your financial futures. The financial checkup will help you. And again, themillionaireinsider.com/FC. If you love the content of this podcast, please follow and subscribe to our channel so you get notified of episodes, and also give us a 5-star review and share a comment. We really appreciate it. Congratulations on taking another step to create a financially free life you love. If you're not sure about your financial future or that it's in order, or you are ready to stop worrying about money, or possibly the fear of becoming a bag lady, ending up broke in retirement, or you simply are ready to know your financial house is in order so that you can have a bright financial future, please go to themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. And that doesn't stand for non-sufficient funds. It stands for Next Step Finance. It's the next best step of what you need to do so you can avoid an NSF notice in your future. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. The number of women who were not broke or poor while working or married is staggering. The entire mission of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast is to ensure you have the information for you, your family, your friends, anyone who's willing to listen to it and apply it so that you can create a financially free life you love. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. Until our next episode, take one action that will help you create a financially free life you love. I'm Annette Baou, your host. All international copyrights are reserved. Bye for now.